Hello, everybody. Welcome. Jamie, if we could start by taking roll call.
Mr. Cooper?
Present.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Mead?
Here.
Ms. Rathburn? Here. Mr. Stressaw? Mr. Wolf?
Here.
And Chair Elfman.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. We're going to start with Pledge of Allegiance. Bob?
Everybody please rise. Our flag's right back there. Join me in Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Have a seat.
Thank you for that directive.
That's right. Baseball time to start.
Let's move forward with approval of the minutes. Does anybody have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion, any changes? Okay. Jamie?
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Ms. Rathburn? Yes. Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
And Chair Elfman.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Motion passes. Thank you. Each member of the public that wishes to speak after the item is presented and discussed will have 3 minutes to discuss per item. Representatives of associations and groups will have 5 minutes. If everybody could please stand who's going to speak, and we'll swear you in.
Stand and raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm any testimony you give at this public hearing will be truthful and accurate? Yes. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to move on to our first case. Case number 23110001, 1700 North Andrews. If we could start by disclosures. Milton?
Don't have any.
Doug?
No.
I had a site visit, and also I spoke to counsel for the association.
None.
Site visit.
Okay. Whoever's going to be speaking, please state your name and go from there.
Good evening. My name is Jana Loda. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Holland & Knight with offices at 515 East Las Olas, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm here tonight on behalf of the owner and developer of the property, 1700 North Andrews. I also have with me a couple members of our team. We have one of the principals, Jonathan Einhorn, as well as our project architect with Design Odyssey, A.B. Alfazi, as well as one of our engineers, Julia Gaffney, who's also in the audience. So we have a presentation to kind of walk you through the little bit of the history of this development, as well as the variances that we have for your consideration tonight. So I will quickly try to make sure I've got this figured out. So this project is fairly unique for a number of reasons, which you'll see in just a moment. Before I get to the actual variances that we're requesting, I'd like to talk a little bit about the property, the project, the approval history, to help put these variances into their proper context. All right, so here's an aerial that shows the location of the property. It's approximately 1.16 acres. It's located east of Andrews Avenue between Northeast 17th Court to the north and Northeast 16th Place to the south. You see Handy, the nonprofit, is located across the street. There's commercial uses to the north. Actually, the vacant parcel on the other side of 17th is zoned commercial. You have the Drake condominium further north of that. Really, the block to our east is largely comprised with the Spanish Spring townhome community. And then, of course, you have residential both north and south. The property, as you can see, it's presently vacant, and as I indicated previously, consists of approximately 1.16 acres. Here's a little bit about the approval history. The site is a singular site, but it has a underlying split land use. The east 0.77 acres has a land use of medium residential. The west, I believe it's approximately 3 acres, is commercially designated on the land use plan. Many years ago, it was rezoned to community facility, and actually was community facility when it was acquired by our client. My understanding in speaking with some of the residents is that it was intended to be some sort of a community hall or community meeting room as part of some uptown project that was proposed by a developer at the time, and since went defunct. Our client then proceeded to rezone the properties back consistent with the underlying land use. So the east portion that had a medium residential was rezoned to RM15, with the west rezoned CB, consistent with, as you can see, the red uses to the north and to the west. That application made its way through DRC, P&Z, and City Commission, was approved unanimously by the City Commission in 2022. We then proceeded to file our application for site plan approval, which we have conditional approval pending the approval of these variances tonight. Just to kind of put into perspective, again, the variances that we're requesting, here's a copy of the detailed conceptual site plan that actually accompanied our rezoning applications. You can see, hopefully you can see it on your screens ahead of you, the commercial parcel, the building was tucked further to the south on the commercial parcel. Actually, was a triangular shaped building to take advantage of the narrowing of the lot, with the on-site parking and a dedicated parking lot to the north. And that will become important as we move to the current site plan. And this is the current rendered site plan. You can see the residential uses on the east and the commercial building, which has now been moved to the northwest corner of the site. This was something that came about during the DRC review. Staff had requested that we relocate that building to create more of an urban form, to tuck it into the corner so that there would be landscaping and walkways on two sides of the building that you see there. With the relocation of that building, and we actually downsized the building by about 600 square feet, the parking that was in that dedicated parking lot was relocated along that internal private shared drive. To be clear, this is a single development. While it's a mixed-use development, it is being approved under a single site plan. The development is all going to occur at one time. So the commercial building will be built at the same time as the townhomes. It will be subject to an overall declaration of restrictive covenants and easements that cover not only the easements that's required by the city code for the townhomes, but also for the shared internal access and other issues. This drawing shows a number of things. It shows the wall you can see in white that runs along the commercial property about halfway up until you reach the commercial building. We also have a commercial building where we only have access into that building from Andrews Avenue. The overall development is about 4,400 square feet for the commercial building. We have 6 two-story townhome units in that building to the north, and 5 three-story townhome buildings there in the south. So here's just some renderings to kind of give you a feel for the project. In the upper left is a view looking to the northeast. You can see again the 2 townhome buildings, the 3-story to the south, the 2-story to the north. You see a portion of the wall that comes up from 16th to the entrance from the sidewalk for the parking for the commercial. Again, all the entrances into the commercial building are located on the Andrews Avenue side. The image in the lower left-hand corner, you get a little bit better perspective now of the commercial building. Just to clarify, along Andrews Avenue, I've been corrected. The renderings are actually showing palms there. Those are actually going to be live oaks. We've enhanced the landscaping there. We have, I believe it's a 6-foot wide area, actually between back a curb for the landscaping, 7-foot wide walkway. We then have the elevated entrance that you see there for the commercial, and that's largely because of the increase in the elevation required for finished floor. Here's just a little bit close up of the 2-story townhomes. This is on the lower left, you have a perspective looking north on that private drive. You see the wall that is a 6-foot tall precast concrete wall that will run along at least halfway along the property within the commercial parcel. I want to highlight we have like a hardy board finish that will be wrapping the garage units that you can see here on the 3-story units. That's a key element that I'll point out in a moment because that was something that the neighborhood asked for as part of the commercial building that we've added in. Here you can also see a little bit more with respect to the rear elevation of the commercial building. Now these are renderings that we've created following our meetings with the neighborhood. When we first came before this board and asked for a deferral, since then we've had meetings with the neighborhood and have reached a consensus with respect to some of their issues that they had, specifically with respect to the the elevation, the east elevation that faced the townhomes that we're proposing as part of this project. They were concerned that we needed to have some more architectural elements added. So what we did do is we added the metal canopy that you see over the windows, similar to what is on the north and the east side of the building. We also added that kind of hardy board paneling between the windows. You can see it there kind of in a lighter brown. The foundation plantings, that's going to run along the rear of the building is actually a tiered calusa, and I think it's I forget some other type of flowering plant. But we are also proposing, and you see them here, palm trees where we can accommodate them to also help break up that elevation as well. This shows that there is no entrance, no loading, no back of the house, so to speak, on this commercial building, and it has intentionally been designed to provide a nice aesthetic screen to Andrews Avenue and the commercial uses across Andrews, and to tie into the architectural finishes associated with the proposed townhomes. All right, so here again, this is our landscape plan, and again, it has not been updated to show those palms at the rear of the property, but just again, give you a flavor for the layout of the property. I want to draw your attention, because you'll see this in the images that are coming up, the red dotted line. That is actually the property line or the zoning line between the commercial CB zoning and the residential zoning. And that's important because our variance request is from a specific section of the neighborhood compatibility requirement that requires a buffer between commercial and residential. And that's what's mitigated with all of our variance requests, is because we have this line bisecting this single development site and the relocated parking. All right, so here's the list of the variances that are before you. Again, they're all from section 47-25.3A, 3D of the ULDR, which again requires a buffer yard between commercial and residential. And where you typically see this is where there's existing residential and you have commercial that's being proposed, and they're trying to obviously buffer that residential from this new proposed commercial. It's unique with our site because, again, we are buffering our own commercial from the residential that we're proposing in this single site. First variance is to eliminate a portion of the 10-foot wide landscape strip, and you'll see that in a moment. The next is to allow parking within 12 feet of the property line, to allow the dumpster to be located within 4 feet of the property line, and to eliminate the required wall along a portion of the property line adjacent to residential. So I have a few graphics to kind of show you these variances in the context of our site plan, coupled with what you now understand is kind of the unique nature of this development, given the relocation of that parking from that northwest corner into that private drive. So with the relocation of the parking into the private drive, as you can see here, our variance is largely being requested where the parking is located. We're able to provide the 10 feet to the north, around either side of the dumpster, and then again south of our parking. We're unable to provide it at the very, very tip at the south, largely because the lot at that point is so very narrow, we can't accommodate the 10 feet. The variance number 2, that was again created by virtue of the relocation of that parking into the private drive with the pushing of that building to the northwest corner, is the parking within 12 feet of the property line. Again, you can see the red dashed property line, or I'll call it the zoning line. And of course, the variance is exclusively for the parking that is now within that area. Variance number 3 is for our dumpster. I have to highlight that this is not your typical dumpster. It's a much smaller size dumpster, and it's fully enclosed and screened with landscaping on 3 sides and obviously a gate. It is going to be a smaller dumpster largely because of the type of uses that can go in this building. We are parking this building at a 1 to 250 ratio, which then limits the types of uses. So a restaurant, a bar, a coffee shop, a medical office, things of that nature that require a higher parking demand are not going to be able to be accommodated here. It's most likely going to be a professional office or some sort of retail use. So as such, the dumpster requirements for that are much smaller than a food use or a medical use type of business. So our next request, again, in part because of the relocation of the building, is for the dumpster, which is located within 4 feet of the property line. And then our last request is for the wall. The same section requires a wall between residential and commercial. As I pointed out below, you can see earlier in the presentation, you can see the 6-foot wall that runs about halfway through the property. We then have basically our building. Our building itself, we feel, acts as a wall. It's obviously aesthetically designed in a pleasing manner, landscaped, no activity at all into the building on that side of the commercial building at all. But we can't count that as a wall, so we have the variance request that's before you. So here's the criteria for the variance, and I'm just going to quickly go through, and then I will conclude. As I've highlighted through this presentation, we believe that there are special conditions and circumstances that affect this property. The fact that the overall parcel itself has a split land use that has been associated with the property for a very long time, and that in order to develop anything other than a community facility, the owner was required to rezone the property, which we did, consistent and matching the underlying existing land use designations. That the commercial parcel, which is really what this variance is all about, it's the variance is to allow that commercial parcel, that the commercial parcel is very constrained due to its triangular shape and size. The original size of this parcel actually was 0.42 acres, but as part of the redevelopment of this site, we had to dedicate almost 14% of that acreage for traffic ways along Andrews Avenue, which then further reduced the size of the parcel. Also, access into this parcel, as you can imagine, due to its shape, is constrained. Any access has to have a certain throat. So the south half of this parcel can't be accessed from Andrews Avenue. We also have the proximity of 16th to 17th Terrace. We have a bus stop. You can see that with the gap between the two trees. That also, there has to be a distance for any access points to the bus stop. So access from Andrews Avenue is effectively prohibited. These circumstances are peculiar to the property at issue and to such small numbers of property, another one of the criteria. We believe that it's fairly unusual to have a single existing development parcel such as this one with the split underlying land use designation that you see. As I noted earlier, it's probably likely why this board hasn't seen many of these requests before, because we do have this mixed use being developed under a single site plan with both commercial and residential by a single developer with shared infrastructure, shared private road, in order to develop both parcels as logically as possible. I would submit that the split zoning coupled with the size and the shape of the commercial parcel is indeed unique. Next one is that the literal interpretation of the ULDR would deprive the owner of a substantial property right enjoyed by others. The buffer yard requirements at issue here are in place to protect, existing residentially used lands from proposed commercial development. Here, we have a single developer who is developing everything all at the same time within a common development scheme. The literal application to require the buffer yard requirement in this particular instance, we believe, would deprive the owner of the right to fully realize a commercial use on the property that's properly zoned for that. It's a unique hardship not self-created or the result of disregard from the ULDR. As noted above, the issues that gave rise to the variances relate to the fact that the development parcel on which the site plan is based has long had a split underlying land use. The portion of the development parcel designated commercial is a very unique shape, triangular, and size. We also add to that the right-of-way dedications that were required by Broward County that further reduced the development size of that parcel. Next, we turn to the fact that whether or not it is the minimum variance to make reasonable use of the property. As noted earlier, the adjoining residential property at issue here is the very residential that will be approved as part of the same site plan. The overall development scheme will be well known to any residents or purchasers of those townhomes, as the restrictive covenants and easements will already be in place as part of their acquisition. Indeed, As part of our DRC comments, we have to submit our draft declaration and restrictive covenants to the city attorney, which we'll be doing to document the easements that we're required to record per your city code around those townhomes and to assure that we have the shared access. Great care has been taken with respect to the landscaping. I cannot emphasize enough that these variances are all internal to our project. We are not asking for any other variance as it relates to anything with respect to the perimeter of the project or otherwise. In closing, I'd like to highlight that since these past few months, we have met with the South Middle River Civic Association, as well as the Spanish Spring Townhome Association, at which representatives from SMRCA also were present. And I don't know if you received these or not. I provided them to staff earlier, but I have a letter from the South Middle River Civic Association that is supporting the application, as well as a letter agreement that we entered into with Spanish Springs. And I'd like just to highlight a few things. In our letter agreement, we have committed, as part of that restrictive covenant that we are required to file with the city, in which we are committed, I'm stating it here on the record, to restrict certain uses, prohibit certain uses for that commercial parcel. And that's, again, we're committing to do that, committing to include it. We are happy to have that added as a condition of the approval, so when the city attorney is reviewing the covenants for purposes of the easements, to confirm that those are there. We've also agreed in this letter agreement to set hours of operation from 6 to 8 p.m. for any business to be open to the public. We've also committed that as to the location of any wall signs, and also with respect to the location of trash containers with the townhomes and the time frame for them to be pulled back in. We've also committed to posting no loitering or trespass signs, because there was some concern for the neighborhood that there might be people who might try to encamp there. We, of course, do not want that at all. And the other thing that they asked, obviously, was for the elevations to be upgraded on the east, which, as I shown you earlier, we did add 2 more elements. So with all that, we feel that we've not only met the criteria for the granting of a variance, but we're excited to move this project forward. We've done our best to work with the neighborhood, and we'll continue to do that. And we look for your favorable recommendation and approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions, as well as anyone from our team.
Okay, we're going to listen from the public first, and then I'll probably bring you back up. I'm sure there's going to be questions from the board.
Yes, Chair, before the public comes forward,
Sure.
Dwayne Spence, Deputy City Attorney, I just wanted to address one of the proffers made by the applicant with regards to the conditions of the restricted covenant. Because this is a quasi-judicial hearing, it's a hearing in which you all act as fact finders to see if the applicant meets their burden of the specific criteria. We cannot bargain away that authority or your evaluation. It's on the preponderance of the evidence stated in the code. To that extent, conditions may only be imposed if you find that their application does not meet the criteria of the code, but for the imposition of the criteria or the condition allows it to meet one of those criteria for variance. So, in other words, there has to be a nexus or a tie between the condition that's being proffered and the actual criteria in the code. It can't just be any condition. Just perusing some of the conditions that were proffered, those are more appropriate for a development review permit, like a site plan review, versus a variance application. So I would caution the board against accepting or imposing that as one of the conditions of approval.
Thank you. Just hit the microphone.
Okay, sorry. We are in the process, we've gone through DRC review. We will be going back at least to add these elements and the landscaping that I've indicated that we're adding. Based on what Dwayne just said, and I know Ms. Freed has obviously a concern with it not being included as a condition, is it possible that it be included as part of our DRC comments then, to be included in the covenant at that point?
Sure, it can be included in the covenant. I'm just I mean, the associations need to do whatever they need to do with regards to ensuring that it's included in the covenant, but relying on this board's action to do that would not be appropriate.
Okay, my name is Amy Freed. I am representing the board and the Association of Spanish Spring Townhomes, and I just have to tell you, unfortunately, you know, they say, who can kill you? Lawyers and doctors. So, unfortunately, we were misled by our attorney. We met in good faith with the 1700 project, and there were initially we didn't approve of the variances for we felt that they were not going to be complementary to our property and our association. But after listening to why they were doing them, we said we think there are things that might be of more importance for us. First of all, the aesthetics were changed to make it more complementary to the residential, which benefits everybody. But more importantly, if you know our neighborhood, you're going to see vape shops, you're going to see tattoo parlors, you're going to see bar and lounge. There are a lot of undesirable tenants that could be occupying a commercial space that is in a family-friendly neighborhood that has been improving year by year and getting more people to, you know, upgrade the projects. If you lived in that neighborhood, these are things you would be concerned with. So we were told that if we would put together these restrictions and that they approved of it, the landlord approved of it, that we could have those recorded with the variances by the city, and that way they would run with the land, and anyone that is going to purchase that commercial property, which will, I'm sure, be sold eventually, they would have to adhere to it. I'm on the board. I know covenants and restrictions can be amended. So that, in a sense, is great. They're going to do that. That's not going to protect us. We need to make sure that that commercial property, which initially I'm telling you we didn't want, but if it's going to be there and it looks good, we want the right kind of people there. We have children, we have dogs, we walk around that neighborhood at all hours. We don't want the wrong kind of establishment there that is going to infiltrate right into our backyard. We are the largest development of 53 homes that are right bordering where they are. We are right there. So what I'm upset about is our conditions to approve the variance were based on you as a board, Mr. Elfman, approving and recording what you're saying now cannot be recorded. That was, we needed the city to protect us.
Okay, so
That's our concern.
So a minor correction, this board can't provide that protection, but the process which has ongoing in which these conditions can be placed in restrictive covenants are on you're going through an administrative site plan review? DRC, right, correct, an administrative site plan review
Jana
process.
Loda once again, it's I believe a site plan level 2, and we've gone through the process, but again, we do have to go back to add this elevations, and again, I've said on the record, I think 2-3 times, we are committed, we have a letter agreement with Spanish Springs to include these prohibited uses in our covenants and the other items outlined in that letter, and I'm just trying to find a way to make her comfortable, because again, we have that commitment, 100%.
So council has stated on the record that that you can play back and you have a letter agreement that these will be conditions that will be placed in a restrictive covenant that would be a part of their site plan approval. So she's provided you that assurance on the basis of your support.
What does that mean when the commercial property might be sold? How will that work for the next board that could be there? Is that going to protect it?
So the restrictive covenant provides for the entity for whom the restriction is set for the benefit of to enforce that covenant. So if the leaser or the property owner of that building or structure puts one of those uses in, they would be alerted. Well, at first they shouldn't put those uses in, but
right.
If they put those uses in, they would be alerted to the restrictive covenant, and you can use whatever legal mechanism to enforce.
Right, but from what you're saying, is there's no city that is going to protect us? You're talking about a covenants and restrictions for which the landlord and they prepare to get the approval for the building to be built, which is what my association did, and we've changed it numerous
So I'm curious
times.
as to,
We've changed it numerous times.
when you say city protect,
Meaning,
I mean, what is?
okay, so Mr. Einhorn owns it now. He sells it to Mr. X in 5 years, who says, I want a vape shop to be there, and I don't care. I'm going to put signage in the window. You're not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to change the restrictions and the covenants. We're going to get the members to approve that. If it hasn't been protected by, this is what my attorney told me, if it wasn't protected by the city, they can do, the board can do whatever they
It's
want.
protected by the restrictive covenant itself. I think Ms. Loda will be able to explain.
And just to clarify, the Declaration of Restrictive Covenants is covering the entire project. So it's including the 11 townhomes as well as the commercial side because they share common access and other common infrastructure. Our intent is that it's not just the commercial owner can say, I want to release this. You would have to have all the townhome owners also join in. And I'm happy to work with your legal counsel to draft language that would make them comfortable if it's some supermajority or 100% of the townhomes, which I seriously doubt they would want to eliminate those uses that are actually protect the value of their homes. But
I think we have legal speaking to legal here, and you're missing, I think, I could be wrong, but what he's saying is we can't do it. They've agreed to it, but in your other meetings with the other boards, they can put it in, and it's there as a vehicle to the end of time that you can use to enforce. He's not saying they won't do it, and it's not up to you. We just can't do it.
Correct. So what is being said is that the attorney for the applicant has agreed to enter into this restrictive covenant, that it will be done as a result of your association supporting this variance request. So what's going to happen tonight, assuming the board finds that they meet all the criteria for a variance, if it is granted, when it goes back for site plan review, they will be placing these conditions in a restrictive covenant as part of the site plan review process at the city. If they do not, I just wanted to make it clear for the board that their action does not force this individual, the developer or the attorney to place those restrictions in the covenant, but you have an agreement that that your attorney and the association can seek to enforce if they go back on their word.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I ask a question?
Oh, sure, Pat.
First of all, Dwayne, I wanted to, something you said in the very beginning was that the offer by the developer to make the concessions, the covenants and all that, couldn't be included in the variance unless we found that those were the only things that made them meet the criteria.
That's correct.
Okay, so if we were to, it's like, we're speaking the same language with different accents. So if we were to approve this variance, but we said that the only reason that we were doing so, the only way that they met the criteria for the granting of the variance was the promise to impose those covenants, then those covenants would be part of this variance. Is that correct?
It would. My concern is whether or not the record of the hearing and your discussion has enough evidence or testimony to back up that assertion.
Okay.
So the board can definitely say that. If the applicant or whomever else challenges the variance request on the basis of the fact that it doesn't meet the criteria, and one of those things is that you're saying is that, well, because of these conditions, it meets the criteria. I would just like to have additional support on the record to defend it, presuming someone challenges the variance
And
approval.
the second part of and I think we could do that if we were inclined to grant it, which I haven't really decided yet. But the covenants that you're proposing and the concern that this woman has posed are that those covenants could be changed in the future because they are only protecting the property that, with the townhouses and the thing. And what she's saying is those covenants aren't to protect that property, they're to protect her. And so the question becomes, we talked about the beneficiary of those covenants being the townhouses that you're going to develop, but they have their own interest in that. But in order for these neighbors to say that, okay, this is okay with us, they need to be able to enforce those covenants as well. And the only way that they can enforce them, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, is if they are specifically stated to be a beneficiary of those covenants. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay. So that's my two comments. To answer your question as to how you get protected, I think that those two things might go some way towards that.
And I'm assuming that what her counsel meant by the city provided protection is that the city is listed as the beneficiary of those covenants and is put into position of enforcing.
Yeah, but I would want to see any of those covenants specifically address that one of the beneficiaries of, or one in their whereas clauses or wherever they want to do it, that Spanish River
or acknowledging
Spanish Springs. I'm sorry.
Right.
Is a beneficiary of this covenant and et cetera, so that you all would have the ability, in addition to the city, who would be a beneficiary, to enforce those covenants.
Why aren't you the attorney?
For you?
I vote for you.
No, he's. I don't want his job. He's doing a great job doing his job, but yeah. And again, I haven't made up my mind.
Right.
But if I did, it would encompass that.
Okay.
Thank you, Pat.
I thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that has wanted to speak on this matter? Okay. And sir, just please, when you come up, state your name and your property address. I'm sorry, Vincent, if you could press the button so it's red for the microphone. There you go. Thank you.
My name is Vincent Marcocha. I'm at 47 Northeast 16th Place. I'm the only other adjoining property other than Spanish Springs to the proposed project. I'm for it. I think it's tasteful. I think it's going to increase the value of my property. It's definitely going to be a sound barrier to Andrews. So I'd be on the southeast side where the 3-story buildings are going to be. And I know that it will be a sound barrier. And it's tasteful. It looks real nice, and I know it's going to increase my property value. And again, I'm the only other adjoining property. That's it. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Anybody else? And sir, before you speak, I just want to make sure you did get sworn in, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Please state your name and your property address.
Frank Gonzalez, 217 Northeast 16th Court. I actually wasn't planning to speak today, but I did submit a letter a couple months ago when this was originally on the agenda opposing the project. But I'm here with my neighbors, my Spanish Spring neighbors. I don't actually live on Spanish Springs, but I live in the immediate neighborhood. I'm here to support them. But I'm kind of disappointed, and based on the conversation, I think Spanish Springs and the other neighbors are third-party beneficiaries. This is why we wanted those conditions placed on the property so that whether the city enforced them or not, if the covenants were changed, then we're in violation of the conditions that were placed on the approvals for these variations. So so that Spanish Springs could have standing to kind of enforce them if they wanted to. But I kind of just wanted to add that there are small and irregularly shaped lots all over the city which are developed without variances. In fact, diagonally across from the subject property, there's a similar triangular shaped property that has had a successful business on it for as long as I can remember, 20 years maybe. They haven't had to ask for variances. It's a small building. They could build multiple stories. They could build up. They could have a smaller building to accommodate the parking. However, I would support this if those conditions could be placed as part of the approval. While it is one owner that owns the entire property right now, those townhomes will be individually platted and sold to other owners. So in the future, for this to age well, those owners need to have some sort of protection, whether it's covenants or the wall or the buffer area, because we don't want 20 years from now someone to walk through there and say, how could the city allow this to be built where people walk out of their front door and they're facing the back of a commercial building. So that's kind of just what I wanted to add. I'm for the project if the conditions could be added onto the record for the variance approvals.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay, that in mind, I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm going to bring it back to the board. Is there any questions, board? Doug?
How many commercial spaces are there?
I don't know if he's there. It has a potential up to 3 spaces. It's flexible in that regard. I don't know if you can recall. I don't
But
think I
no
can
more
pull
than
it back
3.
up.
If 3
No,
are a combination.
right. And it's a smaller building.
Right.
So, and I don't know, again, if the PowerPoint comes up, you remember it's kind of like had like a little kind of
Right.
stacking.
So what kind of businesses are you? I don't know. You didn't mention specifically what you're restricting, but what are you envisioning renting to?
As I indicated, it's largely driven by the parking that's associated, and I forgot to reintroduce myself, Jana Loda. It's largely driven in part by again, you can kind of see there's kind of like a natural stack there. So we're thinking potentially up to 3, but it may be just a single user as well. And again, all entrances are on Andrews Avenue. But the parking, it's being parked at 1 to 250. That then mitigates for only certain type of uses, because we would have to come back in and ask for a variance, for example, if we wanted to put a Starbucks there, or a restaurant, because restaurants have a much higher parking demand. Medical offices are parked at 1 to 150, much higher parking demand. So we are anticipating that it's likely going to be some sort of a professional office, law firm, that type of thing, talking for myself, or other type of retail. Retail uses park at 1 to 250 as well. And again, we're constrained by the fact that this is community business. It's the least intensive of your commercial districts. And just so you all have, I think I still have the letters here. The types of uses that we are restricting are, we had listed some, and then we accepted all of the ones that were added by Spanish Springs, is a vape, smoke shop, tattoo parlor, bar and lounge, which again, I don't think we can accommodate because of the parking anyway, liquor package store, massage parlor, pain clinic, drug rehabilitation, daycare center. Again, don't think that we could accommodate it because they have the outdoor area, as you know, that they're required under code. Pawn shop, beauty supply store, mobile internet, mobile phone store, thrift store, adult novelty sex toy stores, escort service, indoor firearm range, detention center, facility providing for the sale and administration of psychedelic mushrooms and marijuana, CBD, and other dispensary. In addition to, again, the letter agreement that we have, our commitment to include this in the larger restrictive covenants that's affecting the overall property. The other thing that the owner came and told me that we could also do, and you see this, is that if they were to sell off the property, is included in a deed restriction as well that runs with the property. That's another way to also, so it's almost like bootstraps and suspenders as it relates to the uses and the other items that are included in here. Again, we've done our best to address their comments. We're happy if it could be included as a condition of this approval, because again, we are committed to including it. The restrictive covenants, again, cover the entire property, so it will be something that, and we can include that even in the covenants, that you have to have 100% of the membership to eliminate these specific uses and the other items that they wanted in this letter agreement, which it behooves every owner in those townhomes probably to maintain those for the benefit of their own property. So happy to do what we can. I'm trying to do things to obviously make them comfortable that we're going to keep these there. for the benefit of the townhomes and the larger property, because they've been great neighbors, and we want to continue to have that collegial relationship.
Is there a homeowner association with this property?
There will be an association created. One of the other things I mentioned, the easements that we're required to record, basically the 5-foot easement along the rear of the property and the front of the property. This is inside the wall, by the way. That's in your code. And the cross easements and whatnot for the shared drive and whatnot. But one of the other things is we will be recording. We don't have to replat or anything. That's not required because of the size of the property, but we will be recording the legal descriptions for the individual townhome lots that will be sold. And that will be documented in the restrictive covenants as well.
And all the parking is commercial. There's none of those parking spots are for the residents? Or
No,
guests?
no. The residential had 3 guest spots. You can see them in between the 2 townhome buildings. The parking on the exclusively for the commercial. The one thing that may be a built-in synergy here, I mean, this is for obviously the future development for them to come to an agreement, should they choose. If, for example, if this is like a law firm office that works 8 to 5, not my hours, but 8 to 5, on Monday through Friday. There is some synergy there for some shared parking if they wanted for overnight and on the weekends, because they're dark at that point. But that's not anything that we're including. That's something that, again, would be an approval by the city. You would have to come in and get that agreement. But the development itself has been done thoughtfully to try to, again, mitigate any impact associated with that commercial use, that commercial building, to make the rear look and again, appreciate the comments from the neighborhood because they made the building better. And that's kind of where we're at. And also to address staff, because that's kind of what led to all this, so by moving that building.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
Do you have a question, Pat?
I do. I have several. Of course, I do.
That's okay. I do too, so I'll let you go first.
Okay, at some point a few minutes ago, you mentioned a deed restriction. Is that part of, is that a new offer? Or?
That's it. And include that, at the point when this owner, if he sells this property, that we will include as a deed restriction the items listed in this letter as it relates.
The deed restriction would have to be...
It would be on the commercial parcel.
Right. The deed restriction would have to be recorded now, saying that these following uses will never be permitted on this property. Is that what you're proposing as part of a deed
It would
restriction?
be, right now, it's not a separate legal parcel. Once that legal parcel, and again, I don't know if this...
He owns the whole thing, right? He owns the commercial
it's a single legal parcel right now,
Okay,
single
so-
folio.
Yeah,
But once it is...
Pursuant to that single legal restriction now, if you recorded a deed restriction,
I guess, you know what,
you could
you're absolutely right.
on the
You're
entire
absolutely
parcel,
right.
and that way, if your footprint of the commercial at
No,
some point
you're absolutely
expanded,
right. We can't.
It's
I
on
mean,
the whole
you
property.
may, it's something, the cleaner way from a title perspective, those things that relate only to the commercial, it's better to put it just on the commercial because you can't do those uses anyway on the residential
Yeah,
piece.
but it wouldn't hurt the residential to put those on the entire parcel at this point in time.
I have no problem. I think I'm going to try to, he moved on me. I told you to stay over here. I have no problem having us do that as a condition of the approval or as a condition of the DRC. The only thing I would ask is that once we do create the separate legal parcel, that the prohibited uses that only relate to that we can just, it's just imposed on that parcel. It's just logical to have it only on the one.
Yeah, but it's irrelevant at that point in time because, as you said, it's on the residential portion or whatever that's zoned. It's not going to be permitted use anyway, so it's redundant. As you said, the belt and suspenders.
Correct.
So you could right now do a deed restriction. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's number one. Number two, I applaud you for attempting to address the criteria because a lot of people don't. It's not exact. I mean, you tried, but some of it is just a little bit generic for me. Number one, the special conditions and circumstances affect the property at issue which prevent the reasonable use of the property. And your answer to that is because it's being developed on a split land use and split zoning, couldn't you have changed the land use on the commercial parcel?
I'm sorry, what do you mean change
You're saying
language?
that it's unique and special circumstances exist because you've got 2 land uses and 2 zoning designations. But couldn't you, it's expensive, but couldn't you have changed the land use?
You mean make it all commercial?
Or all residential?
All residential, absolutely. But understand it is expensive and extremely
Right, I understand, but that's not one of the
time
criteria.
consuming because it's not just city approvals. We also have to go through the county.
I understand. No, I understand how
Yeah,
rezoning
so,
and then it goes.
it's, I mean, as it is, we changed this back to the zoning associated with the underlying land use. With the CF zoning, you could have a jail, you could have had a recovery detox center, you could have had a host of community facility uses, which we know they definitely didn't want.
Right, but the reality is
Right.
this is a 0.4 acre parcel. so
No,
you're-
that would be the overall parcel with zone CF, the 1.17 acres.
Again, yeah. Let me see what are my other questions. All right, that's it for the moment.
I have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
Some of them were answered. So the commercial and residential, are they going to be two different associations, or is that all going to be part of one association?
We haven't exactly, there's definitely an association that covers the entire property and provides for the cross easements and access and shared infrastructure and whatnot. There may be a separate sub-association associated with the townhomes.
Okay. And the other question I have for you is, I noticed one of the variances is for the garbage. But when I was looking at the townhouses, just real quickly, where would their garbage collection be?
The plans provide a space inside. They're the city, rollout. And there's a space provided inside the garage for them to be stored and then brought out for trash collection day. And I believe even, I know the city recently passed an ordinance that's not codified as yet, but the restrictive covenants, and it's also covered in part by the letter as well, will provide where those, when they roll them out, that they're to be, parked at the street here, not out on 16th or 17th, and also that they're to be returned to the garage at the end of day.
Okay.
That's in the letter agreement and will be in the covenants as well.
I know DRC would normally pick that up, but it's just something I saw
And
that
I
looked like it was
remember, I
missing.
know it was part of our DRC comments that, have the space location inside the garage for them to be stored.
Okay. Go ahead, Doug. Did you want to say something else?
Yeah, it's your dumpster thing is really bothersome to me. That you're going to have a commercial garbage truck come in here at 4:30 in the morning in the middle of your residential area to empty that.
And I don't know if Julia can speak to that, but that is something, again, that my understanding, and again, I don't know if staff knows this, that we can control to a certain degree. It's not going to be like a daily pickup. At most, it's probably a weekly pickup. And our intent is to have it so that it's not anything that's going to be an issue for the residents. So
Can you put that as a covenant that will only get picked up at certain
I'd have to
times?
check with the waste service provider to see, what accommodations they can give us, but I'm happy to inquire. It's 2 times a week? Okay. But I'm happy to check, sir, and see what we can do there, because I appreciate that comment. So.
Because I don't live personally far from some commercial property, and I know I'm not that close. I'm not this close to it. And at 4:30 in the morning, you hear it. I don't care how quiet they want to be, and you're right under everyone's windows, smack in the center of your lot.
Understood.
Good to know I could call you that early.
It's early than one would like.
Yes, Sculba.
Mr. Chair, you brought up a great point, and look, I think it's a beautiful project. I think it's going to be great for the area, but as the chair brought up, where are you going to put 30 carts on one day, or 33 carts on one day and 22 carts on a different day? Where are they going to be staged for the city to pick it up? I think that was a great question.
Are you talking the trash receptacles that go out?
Correct, because we have trash, recycle, and yard waste. So once a week we have all 3 cans come out. Other time we have at least 1 can come out. Ready to stage.
All I can say is that the site plan was vetted by staff. That I don't believe that was an issue that was raised.
I'm looking at reality.
The number of trash receptacles for the townhomes that would come out.
So in these type of projects, for townhome projects, we ask them to show in the garages where they're storing them, and then on trash day, they just pull them out to be picked up, and it's very common.
I'm not saying it's not common, but my question is, where are they going to be brought out to? Are they going to be brought out to the edge of Andrews Avenue? Are they going to be brought out to the street to the south, to the north? Is it neighborhood?
I think
We have
she
to look
already-
at it.
No, and the covenant actually, they're not being brought out to Andrews, absolutely not, because obviously that's a very busy thoroughway. We're not bringing them out to the street to the north or south. That's something that's in our covenant and that we've agreed to. They're to be brought out there's a green area in between the driveways, and to the extent that they need to use the driveway if it's a bigger day.
Are you saying that the city trucks are going to come into your private drive and pick them up in front of the townhouses?
The private drive is the standard city width for a road.
But is the city, you're anticipating that the city's trucks are going to come into your private driveway and pick up these people's trash bins from in front of their townhouses?
They're going to be picked up from along the street just like they would
Which
for any
street?
other.
You just said it wasn't going to be.
While I'm calling it a private drive, it is a standard width of a two-way street that you would
Okay.
have all throughout the city of Fort Lauderdale. I mean, that's actually another one
So
of.
that's I'm sorry, you're not answering my question. My question is, and I think it's what Cooper was asking, Caldwell, sorry, that you answered to either. We were looking at this, that you're going to be dragging them out to a thoroughfare. And that's not the case. Where they're going to be dragging them out is in front of everyone's townhouse. There's going to be a city garbage truck that goes in and picks up the garbage, one that picks up the recycling, and it's going to go down that private street, in front of the townhouses. That's where the garbage is going to go.
Right, the garbage will be placed out in front of each unit, and on trash day, just like on any other city street, the truck will come and pick up the trash. The other thing, just so you all, just to emphasize, the townhomes is not part of the variance in terms of we need the variances to develop the townhomes. The variance is solely to buffer the commercial from the townhomes. So the width of this drive, I know it's hard with the rendering, but it's 24 feet wide, which is the required width of a two-way road, a public two-way road. The other interesting aspect is that if you look at the definition of contiguous, and this requirement for the buffer yard is for where commercial is contiguous to residential, it's technically not contiguous if this was a public road. But because it's a private drive, it's also mitigating the, private road is why it's mitigating the request. But all I can say is I believe there's townhomes like this throughout the city of Fort Lauderdale. The trash is probably going to be handled largely the same way, where it's on a two-lane road.
Okay, is there any other questions from the board?
Just to clarify, I know you said, I just
Sure.
want to hear it again. Your variances have nothing to do with anything facing outside. It's all just
The
interior.
variances are
to your own.
solely on the interior of the property, and again, were largely mitigated when we relocated the parking lot that had a lot of the services that were at the northwest to along this internal road, because we shifted the building to the northwest at the request of staff.
Okay, thanks.
Oops.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, bring it back to the board for discussion or a motion. And let's, if we're going to do the motions, let's do them one by one. We got to have a discussion. Caldwell, you seem shy tonight.
Mr. Chair, shy doesn't fit my repertoire. Just quiet.
Okay. So I'd like to entertain a motion. One by one, please.
Okay, well, for the sake of discussion, I just wanted to clarify again that, I know our board was looking at making sure the developer and the homeowners association comes to various agreements, but there's a limit to how much.
Rolf, if you can turn on your microphone for us,
Sorry, I
please.
apologize.
Thanks.
There's a limitation over diverging from various requests to deed restrictions maybe, and I'm trying to get my arms around what the extent of mixing those hopes or desires or requests might be. Is that a
Sure. So, D. Wayne Spence, Deputy City Attorney. In Section 472412A4, there are a list of 5 criteria that you need need to find that for each of the variances that each of those criteria are met. In reviewing the requests that are put forth, you might want to pay some attention to subsection E of that section and the latter part of that criteria. So that criteria reads that the variance is the minimum variance that will make possible a reasonable use of the property. And this is the part that you probably should pay attention to, and that the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intents of the ULDR, and the use as varied will not be incompatible with adjoining properties or the surrounding neighborhood, or otherwise detrimental to public welfare. I suppose that the testimony that you heard tonight may speak to that latter portion of that criteria, that without those criteria being added, that granting the variance would be incompatible to adjoining properties, specifically the homeowners association, but that you can mitigate that by adding these conditions to address that incompatibility.
Okay, you've done it again. All right, and I thought somewhere in our packet was the list of the criteria, isn't it?
I think it was
emailed
emailed to you.
It was emailed.
It was
Yeah.
emailed separately, I
Yeah,
believe.
all right, so I'm gonna have to go down the list, because it looks like everybody's
So
looking at
there's,
me.
in general, there are categories that deal with, oh, you have it? Okay.
No, I don't have it, but I can.
So the first is restriction on uses. There's
Right.
a list of uses that,
Special conditions and circumstances affect the property at issue which prevent the reasonable use of the property. That's number one? Mm-hmm. Okay. And number two is circumstances which cause the special conditions are particular to the property at issue or to such a small number of properties that they can clearly constitute a market exception. What page are we on? Page 4. I'm missing page 5. Do you have, all right. Do you have page 2, 3, page 3. Made a mess. Hang on. Does anybody have page 5 of this? Just taking with me.
No, I don't. Oh, this thing? No, I don't.
Of this thing,
I didn't bring it.
of the narrative.
Yeah, I didn't. I left that.
Does somebody have this? We're looking for the letter from, you have it? Can I have that? Thank you.
Of course.
Okay. Thanks. Okay.
Just dated that email. You got it.
No, that's not what it is. I'm sorry to be holding everybody up, but.
We're good. I'm putting you in the same page.
so what I'm suggesting
That's
is
not. I
so
wanted this one,
the applicant's narrative.
your narrative. Would you outline where your hardships are?
Part of the actual application. But
Well, I know I have it here somewhere, so talk amongst yourselves.
You had it on the presentation, right?
so
Yeah, I went from page 4
yeah,
to page.
so you're looking at you were reading from page 4 and 5 of
I
the
was
narrative.
reading from. Is this it here? I found it. Sorry. Okay. All right. For the first variance, which is the variance requested for 47.2.53A3 neighborhood compatibility requirements, buffer yard requirements, requesting a variance for a 10-foot landscape strip. Is that you? Yep. 10-feet landscape strip, which shall extend to the property lines for the total distance. I don't think you really talked about that much. You're asking for a variance from a requirement for a 10-foot landscape strip located along all property lines which are adjacent to a residential property and which shall extend the property lines with the total required distance of 306 feet to be reduced to 80 feet. Could you show us what that one is?
Absolutely. That was on this slide right here.
Sorry?
See in green, the green cross-hatched is where we're providing the 10 feet.
Okay.
The area, basically where the parking spaces are, is where we cannot provide
Okay,
it because the
that's
parking.
where it's required, but you can't provide it.
Correct. And then we, at the very, very south end, where the lot is triangular and it comes to a point, it's not even 10 feet deep there. So that's the other.
All right. So going down the list of the requirements, special conditions and circumstances affect the property at which prevent the reasonable use of such property. Given the fact that it is zoned two different and land use two different things, and there is no actual separation between the residential and the commercial, I think it meets the criteria of number one, that special conditions can exist with respect to this property because of those two facts. The second criteria, that circumstances which cause the special conditions are peculiar to the property at issue or to such a small number of properties that they clearly constitute a market exception. I think the variance requested for the landscaping meets that criteria because obviously there are not a lot of parcels within the city that are zoned and land use two separate things. So I would find that they would meet that. Then page 4, okay. Lost page 5 again. The literal application of the provisions of the ULDR would deprive the applicant of the substantial property right that's enjoyed by other property owners in the same zoning district. Again, this is a sort of a hybrid parcel, and it ordinarily wouldn't meet this criteria, but for the fact that it's all one parcel. If they were two separate parcels, I don't think it would meet it, but because of it being two separate parcels, I think that it does. The unique hardship is not self-created, but rather as a result of the unique size and shape of the commercial and zone power. That one's a little bit harder for me to wrap my head around, that it's not self-created because they could have done something else, but that hardship would have been, to resolve that would have been extremely expensive, and probably this project wouldn't be before you because of this post zoning. And
remember, before you read this fifth one, with regards to the conditions that are being proffered, I think some thought should be given.
That's where that's going to go.
Okay.
Because the first one was there was neighborhood compatibility requirements, and that's where I come back to the offer to impose deed restrictions, and covenants outlined in the correspondence between you and, which I assume the city has a copy of, agreement that you made, John. The agreement
We have
that
a
you
copy
made
of
with
the
city,
letter.
You have a copy of that, okay. So that the covenants and restrictions included in that letter to the neighboring development, and that would specifically say that it's to benefit them as well as the townhouses here. I think that's the only thing for me that makes it fit neighborhood compatibility. If not for that, I don't think you meet any of these criteria. You're unique, but the conditions are not so unique that without those conditions and without those deed restrictions, I think that you meet the criteria. So, and then in the fifth, the last one,
Yeah, I took your comments to address that, particularly with the last one that speaks to the use varied will not be incompatible with the adjoining properties.
Right,
I take it that you were saying that these conditions make it compatible.
exactly.
Right.
That without those conditions, this variance is not the minimum variance that would make possible reasonable use of the property, and that the variance would be in harmony with the general provisions and content, and would be incompatible with adjoining properties. So without that, I would not find criteria number 5 is met. So the only reason that I am going to make a motion to approve that first variance, and I'll be at this all night,
Subject to?
is that it
Subject to the conditions?
yeah, subject to the conditions and the additional offer made tonight that there would be a deed restriction, and that those conditions will be supplemented by them being to benefit the adjacent townhouse development. Okay. So there's the motion to approve that one,
I'll second
based
it.
on all of that.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Jamie, do you have that as somewhat of a motion? Not close? Okay, so let's see if we could do it so this way we could record it properly.
Okay. Based on what, a finding that they met the criteria as I just outlined, I move to approve variance 47, the first one, which is 47-25-.3A3DI. Okay?
Subject to the conditions.
Yeah, subject, because those conditions were an integral part of me making the motion to approve it, the conditions that I just outlined need to be incorporated in the approval of the variance. No?
Well,
Or, subject to, if that makes you...
Well, you didn't outline the actual conditions, so we need to be clear that it was the conditions proffered.
Okay, the
proffered
conditions
on it.
proffered are outlined in the letter to the homeowners association, so, and I apologize, I forget the name of it again.
Spanish Springs.
Spanish Springs, thank you. That in the letter to Spanish Springs, supplemented by the proffer tonight, that they would do a deed restriction saying that none of the uses that were objectionable to Spanish Springs would be ever permitted on the property, and that the deed restrictions and the covenants would specifically say that Spanish Springs is a beneficiary and has the right to enforce those covenants.
We okay with that one, Jamie?
Don't do it.
Okay, good.
They didn't talk about it.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on this one? On the first one? Okay, let's roll call on the first one.
Mr. Jones? Yes. Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Ms. Rathburn?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
And Chair Elfman?
Yes. Okay,
Yes,
first motion
7-0.
passes. Next one is for 47-25.3.A.3.D.
Can I just say ditto?
In the manner of speaking, yes.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion, having determined in my view that they meet the criteria that I just set forth for the granting of the previous variance, specifically with respect to the criteria for neighborhood compatibility, and incorporating the proffer that was made tonight for the development deed restriction and the covenants, and the neighborhood property owner being able to enforce those. I'm making a motion to grant 47-25.3A3D2.
Second.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
Can I make a motion to amend your motion?
That's part of the discussion. Go for it.
Okay. Can we amend whatever to have face in parking only with regards to the parking?
Remember, if we can get a clarification on
sorry.
that.
What?
So the variance is for a code
Parking.
section dealing with parking restrictions. So
Right, so I'm saying to grant this, they have to do head-in parking only into the spots.
oh,
It's related to parking.
so again, it's easier to speak to the the uses that were outlined in the letter as being tied specifically to the criteria for granting a variance, but I think we'd be hard pressed to show some nexus between head-in parking and the variance criteria.
Yeah, well, I'm totally in agreement with you. I hate people
Well,
that back in,
because a
but
lot
I
of
don't
the
think
things,
it
a lot
belongs
of the
here.
rules on the parking and the buffers is for headlights to hit the residential from the parking. So, so if you do head in, then it's less of a problem than people back in, start their car, and they're facing their lights into people's bedrooms.
We don't have a problem posting some, it would require signage on the rear of the building that, you know, provides no, I guess all head-in parking or no back-in.
Parking only.
Hopefully, I mean, hopefully it'd be something, I don't know how we can enforce it, but.
That's always a different,
No, I
enforcement's
know.
different than
But I mean,
do what
it's,
you can do.
I would certainly appreciate the reason why you're suggesting it. So it's not something we even thought about. So thank you.
And I think one of
I think-
Chair,
do you
I
write-
think one of the condition is they are supposed to be open from 6 to 8.
Isn't that in the letter?
Yes.
That's in the letter, but that's in the letter.
But that's a but that's.
I think there's a motion in a
about
second,
daylight
so
savings
I
time?
don't have to accept your motion to amend. Okay, then
if
I'm
you
not
wish
going
not
to
to.
accept that. I'd like to just take a vote on the motion in the second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Caldwell?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, no.
Okay.
No discussion.
Jamie?
Mr. Mead?
No.
Ms. Rathburn?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
And Chair Elfman?
Yes.
Pass 5-1.
Okay. Pat, you're on a roll.
No pun intended.
The next one is for the dumpster. And again, going through the criteria for the granting the variance that I did with respect to the first one. I believe that does meet the criteria for the same reasons, subject only to the restrictions that you've agreed to, the deed restrictions that you've agreed to, oops, sorry.
Copy paste.
Don't make me do it again. That I believe you met the criteria based on the outline that I set forth for the granting of the first grant.
And for clarification, this is for section 47-25.3.A.3D3
for the request for variance for the dumpster to be located 4 feet from the residential
you.
property line where 12 is required.
And Pat made the motion and Caldwell made the second.
Correct.
Is there any discussion on this one? Okay. So Jamie, when you catch up, we'll let you do a roll call.
Ms. Rathburn?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
No.
And Chair Elfman?
Yes.
5-1. Passed.
Okay, Pat.
The last one is 47-25.3A3D4B, the variance to reduce the total linear requirement of the wall. I agreed that the intent of the variance is met in terms of the building acting as the continuation of the wall, and that it's a minimum variance required to build the project as outlined, and incorporating all of my previous comments about meeting the criteria that I set forth in the first variance, and subject to you including all of those covenants and restrictions and deed restrictions, I move to approve the variance.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Milton was the second. Any discussion? Okay. Let's take a vote.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Ms. Rathburn?
Yes.
And Chair Elfman?
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. I know this was a long one. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Before we go to the next case, everybody okay to keep rolling, or does anybody need a quick break? Okay. Nobody said aye, so let's move on to the second case. Thank you. Next case, case number 3120003, 2669 East Commercial Boulevard. Do we have an applicant? Good evening.
Good evening, Board.
Please state your name and relation to the property.
Can I give them a moment?
Okay, you're up.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Fitz Murphy with Senga Architecture with offices in Hollywood, Florida. I am the agent for the project, and I represent Sofico 14 LLC.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before you continue, I'd like to just see if anybody has the disclosures. Sorry about that. Milton? No. Okay. Doug? No. I did a site visit.
None.
Bob?
Site visit.
No.
Okay.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
So the application before you is the project located at 2669 and 2671 East Commercial Boulevard. The property is in the CB zoning district. The property is currently used as a retail. It's a two-story building with retail on the ground floor with two bays on the ground floor, and what was originally designed as office on the second floor. If you look at the layout of the entire property that's stripped there from Northeast 26th Street to 28th, it's kind of like a strip mall, but each of those, there's about 5 different individual plazas, and then there is public city parking on the front along Commercial. So that public parking is not part of those parcels, but it is completely separate from those parcels. So just for a little bit more background on the property was originally platted in 1957, and the previous owner built the property in 1964 as, again, 2 retail units on the ground floor and an office space on the second floor. The previous owner who sold the property last year was utilizing that office space on the second floor as their own personal office for a real estate company. And they used that for that office space up until it was pretty much sold. Once they sold it, there was a realization that there was not much need for an office space on that second floor. The current owners who bought it last year realized that a residential use would be a better use of the property. As part of that request, the property owners are looking to, which is allowed by code, to have a mixed-use development. So within that mixed-use development, which is allowed in the CB zoning district, they are allowed to request a residential unit or residential use through flex. In this case, we will be requesting an affordable housing flex unit from the DRC to allow them to use this unit as flex. As part of the regulations for affordable housing, there are certain criteria that you have to meet, which include landscape requirements, as well as dimensional requirements. In reviewing the code, the applicant, as well as myself, realized that there are a few of these code requirements that we would not be able to meet because we have an existing lot, and also because that existing platted lot, at some point, there was a dedication to provide that city parking from that original platted lot onto the site, further reducing the site. So there are 3 particular items that we will not be able to meet as part of our requests for that affordable housing flex unit. The first one is a public plaza. the public plaza requirement, the city requires, or the code requires, that we have 1,400 gross square feet of a public plaza in the front of the building. The existing building is at a 0 lot line, so we have no area to provide that. We do have, kind of in lieu of that, we do have an 8-foot overhang over our existing sidewalk, which provides shade and common area. And if you look at the entire development, or that entire street parcel in itself, there is a continuous 8-foot sidewalk with canopy overhang, which, you know, meets that criteria, but since it's not on our property, we cannot count that towards our
Excuse me,
requirement.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I guess I'm going to be rude. Could you just restate what you just said? You're replacing shade trees with a canopy overhang from a shade structure?
No. The plaza requirement is just to provide a public plaza, not necessarily shade trees or anything like that. It's to provide a public area, which is 1,400 square feet, for public use. So we're not replacing it. I'm saying that we do have, because the code does allow you to have like a colonnade in front of your building to count as part of your public plaza requirement. So we do have somewhat of a colonnade. We have a canopy overhang of 8 feet in front of the building, covering the entire facade of the building. Unfortunately, that is on city property, so we cannot count that towards that requirement, but we're considering that as a consideration for this variance. The second request is for a dimensional requirement from the for affordable housing regulations. This requires a minimum lot size of 10,000 gross parking area that is still being used by, you know, this strip mall as part of the parking requirement. And the third variance request that we are seeking is for the lot width, the dimensional requirement for the lot width. There is a requirement for a 100-foot lot width, and our lot, platted lot, is only 35 feet. And as such, we are also requesting a variance to the minimum lot width as well. We are doing along the alley, redoing our parking area to provide for the landscape requirements, the amount of trees that we'll need, and the amount of parking buffer that we will need. So we are making those modifications, as we intend to make those modifications. The requests that we're asking for are things that are...
That being said, public hearing is closed. Don't go far. I'm sure there's going to be questions from the board.
Absolutely.
So, Caldwell, I'll let you start.
So we keep saying under the Affordable Housing Act. So if we wanted just to convert the space to an apartment without using the Affordable Housing Act, would that change your request, or would you even have requests here tonight?
So originally, the request thing flex, there are no flexible units available, from my understanding. The only available avenue to have residential on the property. So the applicant is seeking that avenue because he still believes that that's the best use of the property right now as opposed to office.
Okay.
Okay, let me just clarify this. So how many, is it just one unit that you're
It's
putting?
just one unit.
Okay. And because there are no flex units available, you need to go the affordable housing route to be able to put residential in there.
Correct.
And the reason that you need these variances for basically the green space and for the lot size is because you're doing residential. Otherwise, you're fine.
Otherwise, there are some non-conforming situations on the property, but otherwise,
I'm going to make a comment, and that is that while I am a big proponent of providing affordable housing, it needs to be appropriate for the site. And I can't imagine a family living above the strip center. I mean, just because you're not affluent doesn't mean that you should live in conditions that might not otherwise be conducive to raising your family and doing all those things, and having the only residential unit in the area being on top of this strip center with all the parking in the back and everything else. It just doesn't scream the need to do this. And I personally believe, going down the list of criteria for the granting of a variance, is that you haven't met any of them. But
Okay, Bob?
if I could,
I have a couple questions regarding. I do think that you need to center on, which I think you have, is that the uniqueness of the property and the restrictions of the lot size demonstrate the need to ask for a variance for one. I think that's something that's legitimate on there. On housing, I don't know why it has to be. I live in that area, and I'm a big proponent. I think the whole area ought to be redeveloped with housing on top of retail up there. That's my personal opinion. But you do have a lot of that going on further east toward the bridge and over the bridge. There is quite a bit of residential housing built upon existing businesses, and I think I do believe that's something that urban planners are pushing. The city's been pushing things like that. I don't know about that part of commercial per se, but with housing needs the way they are, I don't want to be naysaying that. But is there a requirement that it has to be low-income housing as part of financing for the project, or what? I'm just curious.
no, this is
Does that size require you to come before us and ask for variances to develop that property, redevelop it for the use the owner wants to do, right?
correct. If I could respond to a previous comment,
Go
or
ahead.
should I wait?
No, go ahead.
So there is currently, although we're on the commercial side, on the north side of that property, on the other side of the alley, that's all residential. They all access their parking through the alley. One of the benefits of having them on that side of the alley is that they provided access to the unit. One of the great things I think about this unit being there myself is that there's a pretty large roof deck on the back side of the property. So you have a 1,000 square foot unit, which is pretty unique in this commercial area. It's a 1,000 square foot unit with almost 1,000 square foot deck that's sitting on the back side facing the alley. So I actually don't think that this is a terrible unit. I think it's actually going to be a very unique unit. It might be actually very sought after. I know that the applicant is looking to make improvements to the building, and having that residential use, I think, will be, I personally believe will be appropriate there.
Let me ask you a question. How do you access the upstairs unit?
So there is a front door. If you look at the facade, there's a front door, I believe, on the west side that has
This is just
stairwell.
west of the where it says Estate Jewelers.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's a stairwell that goes up and accesses the second floor from there, and there's also a back stairwell that accesses onto the deck and then into the unit. We will have to do, as part of our permit process, improvements to that deck, et cetera, and improvements to the unit as well, to make sure that it moves from just an office space to an actual usable residential space. But we do believe that 1,000 square foot affordable housing unit with 1,000 square foot deck is not a bad thing in a commercial area.
Thank you. Any other questions?
What is going to be the intended use of the commercial space?
Right now, it's whoever really comes to rent that space. Right now, there is a jewelry store, and the other one is open. I know in the other bays, which is kind of like a strip mall, so It's all dedicated. Some of them are cafes and things like that, smaller shops. So I'm sure, we'll have retail uses similar to that.
My second question is residential space. Is there an intent for it to be owner occupied?
Not at this time.
Not at this time, so it's been on the discussion table as being owner occupied.
Well, no.
So is there a built-in restriction as to who this can be rented to?
Categories from moderate to low income and very low income.
Okay, anything else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
In that case, we will entertain a motion. Microphone.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to, on PLN BOA-231-20003, variances section, can we take all these variances at a time? I'd like to, and move approval as the applicant.
No.
And Cheryl Finn.
No.
Tied 3-3.
That was a tie? That was a tie and it failed. Okay. Let's move on to the next case. Case number 231-20004, address 2120 Imperial.
Imperial Pond Drive. I'm here with my wife and Mr. Bazan. He's assisting us a little bit. If I could ask you for permission to give you these pictures.
Sure.
Sir, those pictures will have.
So basically, the reason why we are here is a family matter for us. Our daughter, who you see in the picture, and those two animals are the reason why we built an enclosure attached to the house, which apparently went farther than what is allowed to be built. We are requesting a variance of 7.5 feet for an after-the-fact attached enclosed patio. My daughter, that you see in the picture, has bipolar disorder, and we've been struggling for years to get her stabilized. And one of the recommendations of the therapist was for her to have a emotional pet, a support pet, emotional support pet. And we got one dog, and somehow we got a second one. Because these are large animals, we can have them, because in South Florida, one day you have rain, one day you have extreme heat, and you can have the animals outside. The other thing is they bark. They see squirrels or these lizards, and they go crazy. So we wanted them to to be in a safe place while maintaining the neighbors away from noises and barking and all that. So that's why we're here. Basically, we are asking for this variance to be allowed. The intention of this is just to have a living space for the animals next to us, and that's all. I don't know if you care about looking at pictures or any particular details, but that's basically the capsule of why we're here.
Thank you, sir. Don't go too far. We'll see if there's anybody from the public. I did miss as far as disclosure, so I'd like to do that now. Milton? Okay, Doug? No. Okay, I did a site visit.
None.
None.
Okay. Let's see if anybody from the public wishes to speak. Yes. Okay, sir, you can sit down in the meantime. We'll bring you back up. Hi. If you could please.
I purchased my house in 2004, and since they have occupied that house, they've done a really nice job. It's beautiful compared to what it looked like before. And I'm really happy to hear about a home for the dogs, because they are outside, and, we have squirrels and raccoons and all the rest, so they get very excited. Anyway, the thing I'm concerned about is how close that addition is to our fence, which is close to our bedroom. And so my heart goes out to your family, certainly. But at the end of the day, once that's done, it's done. So if they move, we have other things to worry about and send comfort. And that's my major issue is how close.
Gary, we'll bring it back to the board. Sir, I'm sure there's going to be questions, so please stand up there.
Sure. Without rebuttal, I wanted a question.
In answering to the lady, if you allow me, in answering to the lady, the idea is to isolate in terms of noise that place, so the barking of the dogs will not bother the neighbors. Hopefully.
Okay. Thank you, but don't go anywhere yet. And Bob, did you have a question for a member of the public or a comment?
I had a clarification on what this request was that I didn't quite understand.
Okay,
is
please.
Is this a after the fact request for variance that's already built? And if it is, was it permitted properly? And I'm all favor of this type of stuff, but if this is an after the fact, was it permitted and was it up to code? And what am I looking at as far as what the city's involvement was with this before or after? And do you have any comments? And I had to be very close to that neighborhood association too. And I was in my back of my mind, I said, what did Betty Shelley say about this? But that's my main thing is an after the fact request for a variance, which rubs me the wrong way if it was done without permits.
Well, let's see if we can answer the question, unless somebody from staff want to answer that first, or no? If not, I'll just ask the applicant direct. Okay. So, sir, was that done with permits?
Well, initially it was without it because we didn't think that it was going to be that big. It was like we were blown away when they did it. So we requested the assistance of Mr. Bazan. He has done all the paperwork to get the city approving what they can approve. But there is this variance that we are requesting. We're going to have to, modify the structure. That's basically what it is.
So when you said it was bigger than they did it, who is the they?
It was a fellow that, he was going to do the enclosure and he did it.
Contractor or?
He was a contractor, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Pat, your light's on. Did you have a question as well?
I think staff wanted to go first.
Go ahead, Bert.
I was just going to tell you that they have submitted for a permit, an after-the-fact permit, to get it correctly permitted. And it was flagged by zoning because it is in the rear setback.
Got it.
So my question then is, so essentially, you've built this room that shows on your site plan or your architect's drawing as an office.
No, it's not an office. It's
Doesn't it say
behind.
new office on here? Did you all see that? Yeah.
It's in the back of the house.
Well, it says on page 2 of the proposed site plan, a new office.
No.
So that's
It's an enclosure.
I'm sorry?
It's an enclosure. It cannot be an office.
Well, then am I reading this wrong? Does anybody else? A typo. It's a pretty big typo. So it's essentially an enclosed doghouse?
Yes, that's what it is.
Okay. And I'm not even really going to go to the point of the fact that if these are emotional support animals, but you don't like dog hair, so you want them somewhere else than inside your house, that sort of bothers me a little bit. But so you've built this thing that you want to be where you keep your dogs, so your dogs are not outside, and I assume that your dogs are currently outside because you don't want them in the house.
I mean, they are not inside the house. They are in that area. You see the picture? That's what the area looks like.
Well, the area before you built that thing, it was just concrete.
The dogs were not even in the States. We brought them from Peru. That's where the dogs were.
You brought the dogs from Peru?
Yeah, mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, so they were trained there. They're beautiful dogs. So you brought these dogs and you didn't have anywhere to put them, and you put them outside and it rains and it's hot and they bark.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And you didn't think about that.
Well, it's a long story, but you know.
Well, I mean, responsible pet ownership is, an important aspect of this. But anyway, so they're going to have a really, really nice enclosed doghouse, and that's
That's basically the whole idea.
okay. And how wide is that new room that you're building as a doghouse?
How wide?
Because you're looking for a setback of 7.5 feet. So how wide is that room?
Sir, we'll have you come on up.
I have a point of information, though, that affects this comments is this is, I guess, site plan or survey, whatever I have in front of me. This is dated, was this dated, there's a couple different dates on here. Is this done after the fact that this was caught and now you're going to the city for permits? So this was done way before, this is done after the fact, all these maps.
Okay.
Yes, my name is
Now,
Pedro.
hang on 1 second before you speak. Were you sworn in, sir, originally to speak?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay.
I mean, but I was a backup until if I needed. I mean, it wasn't my intention to speak.
Okay,
if I
as long as you got
really
sworn in, that's all I asked.
Yeah, I'm the
but please
contractor.
state your name again. I'm sorry.
My name is Pedro Bazam. I'm the contractor who take the case when they got the problem of the rectac. It's a person I know, so we start trying to, put this straight. But at the beginning, I said I came with my engineer, so we make the plans, we look at the job, we make the correction that we needed. It really wasn't, it was done properly according to the building code as far as my knowledge, and it was in a stage that is really to see all the structures. So we start the process of the regular permitting, and then when we were fixing the regular problem, you need an additional outlet, new calculation for the AC. We caught me on surprise that the setback was 15 foot, not 7 or the regular side of all the sides, because the shape of the property. And that's when we were told that we need to request a variance. You see there on the property, the line, if you cross the line of the 15, basically it across the whole property. This is a 15 line. And that's what we're requesting, that if we will be completely away of the 6-foot utility easement that is existing, and we request 7.5, so 50% of reduction. This is the front of the house, this is the side of the house, this is where it will be the addition, that is the addition. It hasn't been any progress on the job because it was stopped by the officer. And as you see, because of the shape, usually most of the houses have only this alley of 7 or 7.5. His has a little bit more, but because of the shape, he has 15. That's what he requesting the additional
Code enforcement, and there's been no COs issued, none of that. In fact, what's the current status of the property? I mean, as far as occupancy, legalese-wise.
The permit was never issued.
Okay, never
So
issued.
when it came to zoning, they failed.
Pat, do you have a question?
I'm sorry.
Sir, I saw the picture that you just had. Is that the condition it's in right now?
Yes, that's the actual condition. On the exterior, on the interior is you can see the wood frame.
Okay, because I know when I drove by, I couldn't see over the fence, but it looked like it was all painted and done. But it's not. It's just like this. Okay.
No, it's not.
The interior, you can see the picture that I took. I took that picture today. That's how it looks.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
When did you start building this?
No, I wasn't the builder. I'm as a contractor. I jumped to help.
April of last year.
April of last year. So you got all this done in a month and then stopped?
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, sir. Thank you. Let's bring it back to the board for any discussion.
I can't support the variance because the conditions haven't been met and it's a non-conforming structure.
Okay, so you're not supporting it. So does that mean that you're going to make a motion along with that as well?
If Chair wishes me to?
Sure.
I move to case number PLN-BOA-231200004, variance for section 47-5.31 be denied because the conditions for a variance have not been met and it's a non-conforming structure.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, Jamie? So this is going to be a vote to deny.
Right. Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Ms. Rathburn? Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
And Chair Altman?
Yes.
Passed 5-1.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to take a quick 5-minute recess, and we're going to go on to the next case. microphone back on. Jamie? Jamie? We're starting. Next case, case number 240-20004, 1420 Southwest 23rd Street.
Which one?
On my next page, 1400 Southwest 28th Street. Did I do it right this time? There we go. Okay.
Sorry.
Anything else you want to add, or?
Right. So we.
That's you could go and assist if you wish.
Thank you.
Had no idea about variants, the codes, and stuff like this, so we working close with the city, Bud, James, and Karen to kind of put this thing together. Our architects really, the new zone is when the house was built in 1949, 1946, for variances that we had to file. I had no idea about this stuff, so now that's what brings us here today, and our architect can speak about why we're doing the variance and going from there.
Great, thank you.
So as previously stated, the existing neighborhood goes along what was the old setbacks, and then because of the flood, we need to roof up to the new flood levels. And what we're planning to do is take the existing structure, take those walls, and build right on top of them, so that we don't have to push the front of the property back. I believe it's 6 feet. Hold on. Means that we would just take that existing facade, extend that face 1.10 feet, and then provide the side yard setback and adhere to that. Now, on the east side, there's an existing portion of the building that is on the corner lot. Print raise that area up to allow for a storage area, and then 5 feet, which then makes the building too narrow because we have an existing pool in the back. So what we're trying to do is extend the first floor, add an addition onto it, which would be conforming, except for that 2'10" portion, which would go to the side yard setback of 5 feet. And then on the east side, there is that existing area. We just want to raise the walls directly up. And then in the middle portion, there is a second-story extension, because if we're going to go through all this construction, we're going to make it worth it. We're going to build this family a brand new, beautiful home that they can, continue raising their family in. Second floor structure to an existing non-conforming structure at a front yard setback of 20.75 feet, whereas the minimum required code is 25 feet. Which is a total variance request of 4.25 feet. Again, that is taking the existing wall and raising it up in place, and then also adding that 1'10" portion on the end for the kitchen. The second one being requesting a variance to add a first floor addition to the west side to match the existing non-conforming structure at the front yard setback of 20.75 feet, whereas a minimum variance requirement of 25 feet is a total variance request of 4.25 feet. Again, we're just horizontally extending that front wall that I believe is 1'10" width. That non-conforming structure, according to the new codes, we're requesting a variance to allow the front porch to be open on only one side, whereas the code requires the front porch to be open on 2 sides. We're adding what would be a shade structure to the front door, so that if it's raining in the summer days, they can go underneath it, open the front door, not have to stand out in the elements. And what we mean by enclosing it on 3 sides, the 2 sides would be where the shade structure is, the third side being the home, the open side being the park. The continuation of a non-conforming structure, again, this was built when it was conforming due to code changes, setback changes. It's going to look weird as you look down the street. Everybody's got the same setback.
None.
Okay. So in that case, is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this matter? Okay, sir. And also...
Well, there's been a couple of developments in that neighborhood, in the Edgewood neighborhood, of 2-story condos and townhouses that are being built right now. They want to build out their house, they want to expand their family, and I fully support it.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public?
You said that the 4719-2 for the front porch open on only one side, whereas the code requires the front porch to be open on
the porch.
Okay, so essentially you want one opening instead of two.
Correct.
Question for our panel: isn't the basis of the two subs?
There's a provision in there that says it can be set back 17 feet only if it's open on at least two sides. So that's a provision allowing.
If there aren't any other comments, I can make a motion.
I got some comments.
You got
Okay,
comments.
well, go ahead, Doug.
Okay, so step back, keep that wall, but on the side, get rid of this storage, and you have a lot of room in the back to expand the house to make it
30 feet that can come back. We don't think that it's necessary. No. I don't see a reason why we would need to.
I have it wrong. This is a 9-foot setback now.
That getting where we're at to make sure that we're fighting all the rules and doing everything, but also where we can stay here and live here for a long time. And we'd love to grow our family. She's part of, a lot of the programs. She's, borderline autistic yard, having her little friend play and stuff like that. So that's one thing on the design that we stuck with. If that answers your question?
Sure. Okay. So you're saying either approve everything I want to do.
Money, it's a lot of money just restructuring stuff, and as we all know, we got a single family, and we're trying to get everything built as best.
This is without a doubt one of the most. The hardships are not created by these people. They have an existing footprint. They can hopefully get above the flood. I mean, Edgewood during that event, I was there. I saw what it was like.
Any other questions? And if not, we'll kind of have you do that as a motion, if you did not already. So far, you win for the motion.
So far, I'm doing really well here. Okay, the criteria for the granting of the variance is the original non-conforming use, and circumstances cause that special conditions affect a small number of properties. It does. That these are what the neighborhood was built at. Literal application would deprive them, and this one is incredible.
Okay, final case. Case number.
With Andrew briefly.
Okay, Colba.
Council just briefly didn't even get much into a conversation.
Okay, and apparently council left me a voicemail that I did not. Council left me a voicemail that I did not return.
With me, we also have Julie Johnston and Stephanie Mogul, who are with the developers of this. The property is at 1460 Southwest 23rd Street. The development, new private single-family subdivision in Fort Lauderdale under the code alone is a hard code, and those are the only ways that new single-family subdivisions have been able to be constructed under the king. But it provides directional markers for people, visitors who are going there, to know exactly where the entrance to it is. This is the sign that we're proposing. It's definitely a very nice sign, high quality materials. It's got a concrete base, stucco for the weather mitigation, a lot of landscaping around it. There are over 200 shrubs in this just one general area, ranging from about 14 inches to 24 inches in height. So those will be covering a lot of the basically landscaped. River Reach, the edge on 20th. Before we get to that letter, oops. Now the president, it was from Ted and Sarah. But the neighborhood loves it. They want the sign. Everyone saw the sign, and Planning and Zoning Board, and so this is unique, not just in this zoning district, but throughout the city. The sign, it's kind of it's just looking at the number doesn't really tell the full story. The bottom part of the sign is about 2 feet. That's all going to be shrubs. I mean, what you're actually seeing as a sign is only about 5 to 6 feet. The overall 9 feet 6, and I can go back to it. It includes the. It
was more of a curiosity than challenging question.
Yeah, no, it was a good question.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
For a variance.
Okay, we have a motion, second by Doug Mead. Any discussion?
I would just add to that
the commercial property.
Yes.
Is that the recollection of the?
And then we didn't move on to the other ones.
I think you might have, in retrospect, yeah, you might have specifically addressed, just the number of the first one when I think the intent was.
I'd be happy to make any
Clarification?
clarification of that motion.
Yeah, if
The denial of the,
Just got to restate it, yeah.
well, I don't think you can restate it because we did it. You have to clarify it.
Right. So we're just clarifying that the motion was intended to include all three variances.
I move the three requested variances, section 47-18.21, H.3, -18.21.
Is there a second?
Do we want to just take a vote on that?
Yeah, we can take a vote. Yes.
Okay. Is there a second on the change?
Second.
Okay. So motion and second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mead?
A yes vote was to deny, right? Yeah.
No, yeah, right. So
Yeah,
the
so
motion
like
on the table is the
that's what he's gonna
clarification
ask.
that.
Okay. So I say yes.
Communication to City Commission. Okay. Motion to adjourn?
No.
Okay. Caldwell, let's sit and hang.
You like being here,
I like being here and I like being shy. Dressing the elephant in the room. Fred Stressel. Where are we at with Fred? I miss him. He is kind of like Milton. Years and years and years and years.
By his nominating commissioner, and the commission can vote to reappoint him to the board. I think what his situation raises, though, is some consideration with regards to the actual resolution with regards to these absences and whether or not excused absence it is. If you miss a certain amount of meetings, you're off the board. So there's two ways to go about that. So he can make that request, but if you want to in the future ask via communication that the
Seem right to me, and I'm not saying that, Mr. Spence, you're incorrect in what you're saying. It just doesn't have a good feel to it.
Well, I understand that it doesn't feel good, but I'm trying not to put any implication in what you're saying, but the code is what the code is, and regardless of who it is, that's exactly what happens. So,
and it is a really unique situation. It's like if somebody had heart surgery or something, they are obviously not going to be here. But I think that his commissioner who appointed him will reappoint him, which is what we would all like to see, obviously.
Yeah.
But I would hesitate to go.
no, but I understand completely the point that Mr. Cooper is suggesting, which is it seems like a no-brainer. It should just automatically happen. It shouldn't have to go through this tedious process.
That's what I'm saying
Right.
is that I've been on too many boards where the level of absence because I'm out of town. I don't buy into that. If you want to be on the board and you can't be here for 3 meetings, again, nothing to do with Fred because I think Fred needs to be back on this board, and I certainly support that.
We're all on the same page. I mean, hey, I missed a plane flight. I was on vacation. I got a couple ticks against me. I get it. I'm not looking for myself. I'm looking for a man who physically has to be able to make it here.
And have to resign. That it's kind of like at least in my experience here at the city, for over 14 years, they've just reappointed the individual. But
That's all they do. They'll send you an email saying, "Do you want to be reappointed?" And they will reappoint you.
Yeah, and I think what we can each individually do is reach out and say, we would really like to see. This is a very unique. Talk about unique hardships. It's a very unique situation. We would like to see Fred reappointed.
And also, just to add, we did ask the board, which was confirmed. I'm sorry, not the board, the commission, which was confirmed that we did need additional alternates as well. Yeah. So the fact of a need for another board member did not.
Resolution. But I want to stop short of that because I just think I've seen it abused and.
He's handled letter to me, and actually, and I can state it publicly, he stated a letter to me asking if I could write a letter of recommendation, which I was planning on doing.
So he thinks he'll be back in action shortly.
So Mr. Stressow knows
the process.
our code and ordinances probably better than a lot of people, and our book, which he's the first person I've been here for 14 years. The book that's no one else does that. So
We can encourage you to do so.
Yeah. Who are you?
Implore you to.
Okay, does anything else for communications to the city? Okay, that being said, motion adjourned. Yeah, we're adjourned.